So coming to understand that, it just gets your head around this is fundamentally different. But they're being used more. And they're being used almost as a matter of course, not in the highly dangerous situations, hostage situations that you would imply, but on a regular basis. They're being deployed. And there certainly are instances where SWAT teams are appropriate, in some cases necessary. I think we can all envision them. But these are not everyday occurrences. They're certainly not 700 times a year. But it became very clear that there's really no understanding of how frequently they're deployed, how often they're used. And so, I've undertaken an effort. I want to just kind of share this effort that we've had this year in Maryland, and then I want to kind of hit on some general themes or some observations or thoughts I have, and then I'll turn it over to Radley for his comments as well. I went through a process of trying to get information, and you understand, here I am, 9 months later, I have been unable to date to get a copy of the incident report, the police report from the night of my incident. We filed a Public Information Act, a Maryland Public Information Act, which is the Maryland version of FOIA. It's actually a little stronger, believe it or not, asking for information on what happened at my house. And we were told we were not allowed to have it. It was subject to an investigation exception to the MPIA. But not only did they, it was an interesting stance though, not only did they say we, they weren't going to give it to us because it's under investigation, they said they will object to sharing any information that has ever been investigated, which is a sweeping exception to a Public Information Act because what in the police department hasn't been investigated? But just getting basic information, while at the same time, the comments of the public officials were remarkable as well, following the incident. Sheriff Michael Jackson, elected countywide official, I think re-elected, so I think he's been elected twice. The guys did what they were supposed to do. That's a direct quote. Then Chief High, who resigned shortly after the incident, for unrelated reasons, he said the officers responded with compassion and restraint. That one I still leaves me puzzled because you'd hate to see if they weren't restrained at what they would have done. The county executive, or the chief executive officer of Prince George's County, who I would acknowledge I did not vote for either time, and I'm not a big fan of, but it wasn't before this incident either. His comment was even the most bizarre in that he was talking in a larger interview. This is on a videotape at the Gazette newspapers. He actually said that in America, apology is not necessary because when you're cleared, that's like the apology. And, in the police, they have to follow the evidence, but in the end, because we were cleared, that's really a pat on the back for everyone involved. I'm cleaning up the syntax a little bit, but that's essentially a direct quote. And so this is and I can't get my police report. And so, also, what does leak out a lot of information that's just false? And so I'm just trying to get information. It's actually in reading Radley's report, the idea came to me as a first step, not a final step, as a first step. We needed laws that provide some level of transparency, sunshine on these practices. I think the 700 number is astonishing. And so we, working with some state lawmakers, specifically C. Anthony Meade, state senator from southern Prince George's County, and Delegate Chris Valderrama, delegate from the same district, actually, Fort Washington, kind of Temple Hills, that area inside the Beltway, southern Prince George's. We introduced legislation this legislative session in Maryland that would establish the nation's first statewide reporting mechanism that require law enforcement agencies with SWAT teams to, at the time it was monthly report on the number of deployments and submit that to civilian authority, which is an important piece of it, and would require a statewide official. It started out as Attorney General, it became the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Control, to submit an annual report looking at every police agency in the state, if they have a SWAT team, how often they deploy, and specifically the number, general location, authorization, what warrant did you have, purpose, drugs, guns, hostage, and most importantly, the results. What happens with these things? What do they find when they get there? Did they, force their entry? Did they injure someone? Did they shoot someone? Did they arrest someone? Did they seize property? So it's created a mechanism. It's something that I'm really proud to have in one session in Maryland been able to clear both chambers of the state legislature, and hopefully, and it will be going to the governor's desk on May. In May, I'm confident. Very hopeful. I'll keep it optimistic. I'm optimistic that he will sign it. I haven't gotten any red flags yet, but I think it's notable that it will be the first of its kind because it is something that I think begins a process here where we can begin to shine some light and understand, and that begins the process of making something good come from what happened to my family and I. What was remarkable in this process, and this is the part that I can only share, is the other people I've met who've had remarkably similar incidents happen to them. I think that's the astonishing thing, is you would think, in my case, I got to tell my story live on CNN, internationally, which is what it was like, let off the BBC World News the next day. It was a slow news day. Obviously, a mayor and black labs. There's a lot. It was the strangest. I mean, it's really, we are so blessed that we got to tell our story. But what was remarkable about meeting over a dozen people who around the state, and what's interesting about the people we met, overwhelmingly they were middle class. Overwhelmingly they were white, and from like Howard County, Montgomery County, and Carroll County, and Baltimore County. What struck me about that is I got to figure that these are not the people who are victims of SWAT teams most often. These are just the people who were willing to find me, pick up a phone, send an email, make that connection. But I figure most of the people to whom these botched and ill-advised raids occur are people who aren't, don't meet that same demographic, and are probably people who may not have the ability to get the word out. And I've also spoken to so many people who just called me. My number's actually listed, and I've had these conversations with mothers who've had their children killed by police, who've experienced some horrible brutality. That doesn't mean that their children are necessarily innocent, but there's a measured response, and you start having these conversations enough, they do begin to affect you. But some of these things aren't even drug related. I mean, it's important to understand some of these. One in Montgomery County, Montgomery Village, a cousin of a family's. His ID, not him, but actually it wasn't him at all. His ID was used by someone who stole $500 in property and pawned it, and that was the basis of them kicking down their door in the middle of the night.